So I want you to think about this thought experiment involving risk-taking. Imagine there's two different activities that you can partake in, and there's risk involved in both of them. One of them gives you a 1 in a million chance of dying, and the other one doesn't have immediate risk, but it reduces your life expectancy by a fraction of 1/1,000,000th, right? So that's about half an hour of life expectancy. Now imagine both of them give you the same level of pleasure and everything else being the same. One of them just has a 1 in a million chance of dying, the other one reduces your life expectancy by the same fraction. Which one would you rather do? I'll let you pause the video for a second, and then I'll talk about some real life examples where I ran into this. Okay, time's up. Now, those two concepts actually have names in social science. The 1 in a million chance of dying is called a micromortality, or micro meaning 1 million, right? The reducing your life expectancy by half an hour, we call that a micro life, right? 1/1,000,000th of a life, right? Just like micrometer or micro something, right? Now the way this comes into play, the reason I thought about this was because I had a situation at my job that was costing me some number of micro lives, and I changed it into something that may have caused a few micro morts. We are not really supposed to be eating at our desk, and the problem is that as a recovering eataholic, that policy was tricky for me because I would get a 7, 8, 9 hour shift, often not a whole lot of break time, and it was really detracting from my recovery. So I ate at my desk, but consequently I also had to allow my clients to eat at the desk, and I have food allergies, and that sometimes causes me a little bit of trouble too. But at least it allowed me to work on my eating disorder. Now I often hear, I work in Phoenix, Arizona. We got people from very diverse backgrounds. Some people have interesting fears. So obviously I don't need to explain that a lot of people have a fear of flying. Now what people immediately think of when they think of flying is crashes, terrorism. There's actually another risk involved in flying that a lot of people don't think about, which is the radiation exposure from being high up in the atmosphere. Actually, that might be a bigger risk than the terrorism or the collisions. But the radiation is more of a micro-life risk, right? The terrorism and the collision is more of a micro-mort risk, right? Now, where it really gets interesting is how it intersects with politics, right? So imagine there is a certain policy that will cause some number of micro-morts, and there's an alternative that will reduce the micro-morts but might cause losses in micro-lives. What do you think a politician is going to be more inclined to choose? I think the micro-lives. The reason being that micro-life fatalities happen when they're out of the office, right? So imagine that we could reopen the economy, get people working again. It might improve people's micro-lives because of mental health, but there's a micro-mortality rate of whatever due to a contagious disease. Now, don't get me wrong, it's very hard to weigh those things, right? But I think a politician is going to be tilted toward the micro-mortality, and I think in general we're all tilted toward that. The other reason we might be tilted toward that is because micro-morts tend to be very dramatic, right? They tend to be like a 9/11 kind of event or a pandemic, whereas the micro-lives, you can always blame something else, right, that comes along the way, right? Anyway, so I encourage you to think objectively and don't get biased toward that, right? And actually, this is a risk that we weigh every day. And if you think more objectively, you might it might alter your lifestyle quite a bit, right? Unfortunately, we live in a world where we don't weigh these risks equally, and in my opinion, I think one micromort is worse. Or one micro. I'd rather risk one micromort than one microlife, because you never know how that microlife is going to play out. It might play out in a very painful way, right? Whereas that 1 in a million chance of dying right away, that you either die or you don't, right?